Great. So while Revon is getting mic'd up, maybe it's a good idea to welcome everybody to our panel discussion. I am so excited to be talking about generative AI, the future of FinTech and AI in Africa. So my name is Akhona, and I head up strategic partnerships at Liberty, which is now part of the Standard Bank Group. And I consider myself a FinTech enthusiast, a FinTech scholar, very excited about the opportunities that FinTech brings, especially from an inclusivity perspective. But I am not alone. I'm joined with some highly esteemed, highly knowledgeable panelists. Revon is on his way. But I think maybe let's start off with a round of introductions from each one of our panelists before we continue with the super exciting conversation that we're about to have. So we'll start off with Dirk.
Hi, I'm Dirk. I'm CEO at SprintHive.
Hi, I'm Merelda. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Melio AI.
Good morning. My name is Esther Munyi. I am the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Sasfin Bank.
Wow, that's an intimidating crowd there. So, hi guys. Apologies firstly for being late. I'm Revon Singh. I'm the Head of Enterprise Risk Management for Onafriq.
Awesome. Wonderful. So everyone who knows me knows that I love context. I'm just going to create some context before we kind of like dive straight into it. And I'll just start off with just like some definitions for the kind of like 3 key words that are in our panel conversation today. So starting off with generative AI, you might hear some of us saying Gen AI, and this really speaks to software or algorithms that are usually responsive to a prompt, that create content, anything from text, video, audio, simulations, etc. FinTech, abbreviation for financial technology, which pretty much speaks to any software to make financial services more accessible, more inclusive, to improve the customer experience, customer satisfaction. And lastly, Africa. So we're talking about Africa, we're talking about the land of opportunity, land of growth, land of development, land of, infrastructurally challenged, but I think generally the land where all eyes are on us, and there's just so much opportunity that exists in Africa. So, I think really just jumping straight into it, and I'll just start off with a quote from Ravi Bhatt, who is the Chief Technology and Solutions Officer at Microsoft. So he said that we see a significant role for generative AI not only to transform work environments, but to foster opportunities for the youth, to create jobs, to innovate, and to help drive economic growth and sustainability throughout the continent. So Merelda, I'll start with you, if I may. Generative AI is still in its infancy, so it really is a young technology, as it may. Having only burst into the scene in 2022 and 2023. In your view, do we fully understand the opportunities that exists with such a young technology? So question number 1. Number 2, why are we so excited about it? And lastly, how are we implementing it in the financial services industry?
Okay, I'll try and remember all the questions.
I'm here to remind you.
The first one, generative AI actually started blooming in late 2022, but the underlying technology has actually already been existing since 2017. The large language models and the transformer technology underneath it. So there has been a long time coming until OpenAI kind of made it very openly accessible to everyone. My 75-year-old dad, who is definitely not digital native, can get really cool, awesome things from ChatGPT 4.0. So that speaks to how fast the technology is speeding up in the last 2 years. And the reason why I think we're so excited about Gen AI and FinTech is because we all know financial services is always the leading sector and industry to adopt new technologies because of the availability of data, and there's a lot of data science and machine learning use cases over the past decade that have really shown transformative benefits and increased ROI for a lot of the financial service industries. And I don't think there's any bank or insurance companies who don't have a data science or multiple data science teams today. That's why generative AI really makes this entire data science experimentation journey a lot faster. I can give you one example why it's so exciting. A couple of years ago, this specific company, they had a data science team who spent 2 years trying to recognize receipts from all over the world. And after 2 years, they had to disband the data science team because it just wasn't accurate enough. And in the last year, they could actually build and prototype the same business case within a few weeks and deploy it. So that really speaks to the amount of fast pace that we can move from really, it used to be 2 years and it wasn't accessible. Now just a small handful of team members not really having deep technological background can still prototype and implement and deploy these use cases to transform customer experience.
Wonderful, thanks, thank you. So Dirk, I'll move straight to you and ask you, perhaps, how are we using it in the financial services industry, generative AI?
Yeah, so I think at the moment it's still being used largely in the back office. I don't know of anybody actually using it for customer interaction. We have chatbots, obviously, but I don't think those are generative AI. It's not the latest and greatest. So there are some interactions where it's already at the front of the bank. But things like the data generation using Gen AI to create large data sets. So if you think about those receipts, if I can use that example, humans had to go and tag those receipts and say, this is this field, this is what this data means. And you have to go through thousands and thousands of them. And the models really get good at millions and millions. So generative AI allows us to say, here's a small sample of the data that we've tagged with humans. Now generate a lot more data, training data, to put into normal AIs, not normal, older type AIs like neural nets or classifiers. And those things are driving the ability to analyze data. So again, if you want to create an AI that does expense prediction, you can use generative AI to use a small sample and generate more data to create better models and create more accurate models. So it removes a lot of the human effort in the back office. That then drives the customer experience sort of on a secondary level. That's what I find mostly in production, apart from, like I say, the few chatbots and things that is right on the front. Anybody else have any other examples?
Esther, Revon, would you like to add to that? Maybe perhaps touching on some use cases that you might be aware of where you've seen generative AI and the impact and the effects of it?
You can go first.
Sure. Look, I work for a bank, and one of the key factors is around preventing fraud. Mm-hmm. And I think from a fraud detection perspective, I think it will be a very key thing that will really assist us. Because not only is AI driving innovation and creating all of these opportunities, but the reality is it's also doing so for the criminals. Right? Yeah. So as we evolve from a technology perspective, they also evolve from a technology perspective. So that's a key use case for us, is really around how do we protect the systems, applications, and the data that we have, and also ensure proper privacy. And then the other thing is, because also we're a financial institution, we are under stringent regulatory requirements. And I really do believe that AI will assist us in complying with a lot of those regulations. And also, if you think about how every few years, there's always a new regulation that comes in. And it's becoming more and more difficult to translate, understand what do those regulations and legislations mean for the organization and for our bottom line. So the use of AI could be very useful for sifting through all that information, trying to help us translate it and make it more real and practical. So there's lots of different use cases, but I think the one thing to note is I think it's important we start off with use cases that make sense, that are fit for purpose, because the reality is the hype around AI it really is a hype. I think it's very difficult to really ascertain what's fact from fiction, from what really is just a marketing ploy. I blame sci-fi movies. I think there's this whole thinking of, there's going to be amazing robots. I think there's this inner child in us that we would just think that there'll be amazing things that could come up with AI. But the reality and the truth to it is there is things that can happen. And if you look at our macroeconomic scenario right at the moment, a lot of organizations are moving from growth towards more around how do we sustain the status quo? How do we reduce costs? How do we become more productive with the current resources that we have? And AI can really allow us to do that.
Wonderful. Thanks, Esther. And Revon, anything to add?
Yeah, I think Esther touched on a lot of use cases that we've practically implemented, as well as from a microeconomic perspective. One of the key use cases in our environment being a mobile payments partner, as well as doing cross-border remittance into mobile payments. We found the AI very useful in relation to our Forex transactions and converting that from US dollar to Kenyan shillings to Naira to whatever it may be. Also monitoring and monitoring those transactions from an AML and a fraud detection purposes. So there is definitely use cases that AI does work, and it's been working very well in a practical implementation. But to Esther's point as well, we shouldn't be fooled by the, wow, we're going to have these replace all of us at any point in time soon.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. So, I mean, I think, yeah, some fraud detection, regulation. I mean, I loved what Brendan said in, 2 conversations ago, where he was like, to your point, Esther, as we protect ourselves, the criminals are advancing themselves and they're attacking. So, I mean, that point coming through again. Forex transactions, just so many various use cases. And I mean, Merelda, you spoke of simplicity, and you spoke about the ability for it to, accelerate technology. So many use cases for you for AI, and really just now getting into question 2, and I'm going to pose this to Revon, and I'm going to say to you, Revon, I mean, we are here representing Africa. We're representing the continent, and there's 54 countries in Africa, and we're representing them in the topic today. And my question is, are all the countries in Africa adopting Gen AI at the same pace in terms of adoption rate? Is the growth equitable throughout the continent in terms of Gen AI, and how could this potentially affect our ability to scale if countries are not necessarily adopting Gen AI at the same rates?
Try and answer that to the best. So I think a lot of speakers already spoke about some of the realities that we face within the African continent, and some of those realities are technological infrastructure. Whether we like it or not, Neil did mention that data is food in most spaces, and you'll find that Gen AI uses data, and it's the source, it's the food for what makes it work. I think that's in some regions and some areas within Africa, technological infrastructure is there, it helps and it enables the development. Coupled with that technological infrastructure, you'll find that the skills and the education around Gen AI with that technologically advanced infrastructure is a lot more, and Gen AI is taking over a lot more in those regions. Practical example would be Kenya and Nigeria, booming with the FinTech space right now. Another partner that's pushing hard behind them is Uganda, because the technology and the infrastructure is already keeping up. Same with the skills and developments. The education system allows for Gen AI to be implemented. Funding that and backing that is government policy. You'll find that some regions and the governments are actually promoting Gen AI into the use of their healthcare systems, education system. Once again, Botswana, I think we have some colleagues from the Botswana Innovation Council that actually funds fintechs for development of Gen AIs and development of Gen AIs into their institutions. So definitely not everyone scaling at the same time within the region, coupled with those challenges that they have. Not a surprising challenge, let me take that back. We have the Pan-African payment system. I mean, you would think that, you know what, we've got the Pan-African payment system, this is for Africa, everybody will be synergized on the same space. Reality check, no, That's not the case. Everybody has varying different regulations. I think we need to come through and synergize with that regulation as well if we want to actually see Gen AI prosper within the economy and also scale. I mean, those are some of the inhibiting things as well that's allowing for the fast adaptation and scaling of Gen AI as well. I hope that answers it all in a nutshell.
I mean, I think that's a great answer, very comprehensive. I mean, I'm not sure if there's any other thoughts from any of the panelists.
You can go first.
No, go ahead.
I would say that saying that the country should move at the same pace is sort of is maybe not the right measure. Gen AI is just a tool. It's not the solution. It's a tool that can be used in a solution. So it's when you got a shine in your hammer, everything looks like a nail. The wrong way would be to say, here's some funding for Gen AI. The bank must now use Gen AI. You must actually have a problem that needs solving that this is the right tool for. So you need some research into it. You need to know what the tool can do and you know what the capabilities are. But saying, are the countries going at the same pace, that's like saying, is all the countries have the same problem, do they all have the same regulation? They shouldn't be going at the same pace, then somebody's doing something wrong. Yeah.
I completely agree with that, 100%. I also just think that we have very unique challenges and unique scenarios in Africa that the rest of the world doesn't realize. So I think also, again, there's that comparison around in terms of the standards and the way we should be utilizing that technology. We have very unique requirements. And also just from a technology infrastructure perspective, I think to your point, if you think about, you know, in order for us to really leverage off that technology, we need to have the right infrastructure in place. I mean, power. We need to have electricity in order to power these things. We need to be able to have electricity to power data centers. We need to have access to data, access to the internet. That's not really a reality in all countries or all geographical spaces in Africa. So we need to look at also those, how do we enhance those things that are prerequisites in order for us to really leverage on that. And I think to the point around regulations, again, you know, with the political, there's political instability, but also again, I think there's also a narrative that's been created that we are always the followers and not the leaders when it comes to these kind of things. But I totally disagree with that narrative. There's so much innovation happening in Africa. And instead of us looking outwards into what the West is doing, I think it's important to start looking at what are those solutions that we're building internally and how can we leverage that from each other. Because I do believe there's a lot happening. To your point, fintechs in Nigeria, in West Africa, and in Kenya. If you look at what happened with M-Pesa, so there are unique challenges with unique solutions for us, and were built by us, and I think that's something we should also look at.
So I'm a contrarian, and I'd love to bring contrarian views to panels. And although we all have very diverse and different problems in Africa, one challenge is the same. We all have not English as one of our major spoken language. And when Gen AI first came out, everybody is so worried, like, oh, is this going to widen the digital divide? And for the past 2 years, what we've seen is there are so many startups, so much effort, so many research centers are being built to include African languages, build African language-based language models to close the digital divide. And one example is we're working with a customer, they want to build a chatbot as part of their NGO to support like sexual health, reproductive advice to more like lower LSM. And we're like, oh yeah, just build a text-based chatbot. And they said no, because their cohorts are not literate. And that prompted us to go search far and wide for different various African language models to be able to understand the accent, respond in their language, and respond with local context. And I think that is something that like Esther said, we should all drive in to try and move forward, is how to bring the inclusivity into this new technology and not just say, it's like something somebody else would solve, but it's something that we as the continent should come together and improve on.
I love that. I think you just pretty much, summed up everything. I think just from a problem solution perspective, I mean, Dirk, you actually brought that up, that we shouldn't just be implementing for the sake of implementing. We should be actually solving problems for technology, as you've spoken about, Merelda, solving problems for, regulations. I mean, Esther, you spoke about how with M-Pesa, with Africa almost being, not necessarily being followers, but we actually solved a problem with M-Pesa, therefore kind of like disrupting the space. So, I mean, I think that's just a great way to kind of like bring this question together, is what problem are we solving for, and is the solution actually addressing the needs that we actually have as a continent? Which then brings me to my next question, and it's going to be posed at Dirk, and it's how do we solve the problem of Gen AI overstepping tasks that should actually be done by humans? So we love technology. It is a great thing, and we embrace, I mean, I think most of us who are here are actually embracing technology, but how do we ensure that AI is not overstepping the boundaries of what should be performed by humans? Like, when is enough enough, so to speak?
I think it goes back to the previous comment. It's just a tool, and how you use that tool. So it's humans that will make it overstep, not the AI. I think we love stories. We love stories of, doom and gloom, and this AI is going to take all the jobs, and people said that about electricity. People said that about the railroad. People said that about the internet. People said that about computers, and there's always another thing that's going to take away all the jobs. And we've implemented, like I said in our talk, automation in a great many data centers, call centers. And never once has the business actually retrenched people. Because they have this cost base, if you reallocate people to do more impactful work, you end up lifting the top line, which always has a bigger effect than lowering the bottom line. So you can have a small cost saving, or you can have a massive lift in sales. So people just do more fulfilling work. What I always say is the AI takes the 80% of the easy work away. There's always going to be the 20% hard work, where a human needs to make a judgment call. And the trick is to get the AI to refer that to the human, so that the humans only do the interesting work and where real reasoning is required. And I think the AI will not take people's jobs, but humans might give it people's jobs. Yeah.
I mean, any other thoughts from the rest of the panelists? Maybe speaking on how you may, within your organizations, deal with the, obviously notwithstanding what Dirk has just said, but deal with how people perceive AI as a threat. How is that dealt with in your organizations? Maybe just as an add-on to the question that we've just asked. Esther, you're lifting your mic.
I think that the first thing, it's important to be transparent. Not trying to advocate for this technology behind, closed doors and keeping it a secret. You have to make sure that it's transparent to not only your employees but also your customers, right? And what are you ethically using AI for, and why? Right? So I really agree with the point around the use case, the why. Why it has to be something that makes sense. The other thing is, I don't think that AI will fully replace humans. There are things that humans do that AI cannot do. We reason at different spheres. And if you really look at the uptake of Gen AI in different industries, like in the motor industry, you'd expect that there's a huge uptake, but it's only at a 9% utilization in the motor industry, and only a 1% uptake in the healthcare industry. That's telling that as much as there's a huge hype, and there are early adopters that are moving away from that initial excitement to actual adoption, but it's not as fast-paced as we believe to be. So I do think that the threat around job displacement or job security, ethical use, we can be able to overcome it if we try and put things in place beforehand. So putting the right governance in place, making sure you have the right policies around how you use your data, use AI, ensuring that you put in place training programs, perhaps upskilling the roles and the jobs that we believe will be replaced by the technology. And again, also there's a factor around human and AI collaboration. We tend to believe that, AI is something that will have decision autonomy, but that's not the case. There still needs to be a level of responsibility or accountability from a human aspect. So we need to look at how do we create that collaboration between the human aspect and the AI. And also how do we also, from a human intelligence perspective, because if you really think about it, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take away the routine, rudimentary type of work so that we can be thinkers and think and create and innovate. That means that from an intelligence perspective, that skill is increasing. So we should be also looking at how do we harvest productivity from that human intelligence and not just focus so much on just on the AI.
Yeah, great. I mean, Revon, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would think, also just bring people and people within your organization to rest with a job displacement, and AI is going to replace your jobs. I think a lot and a fundamental underlying factor there is education and awareness, and trying to get people within the organization to actually embrace AI technology and couple to work with AI and technology to enable you to do your functions a bit better. Also, to Esther's point, it's the routine tasks, it's the mundane tasks. You will still need a human and human intervention for quite a few tasks. Listen, I'm a risk person, there was a chat that just went on recently. Is AI going to replace risk management? And I was like one of those people that was like, oh no, I'm going to be out of a job. This is going to do analysis for me and all of that. No, it's not. It's going to prompt you. It's going to enable you. It's going to assist you in doing your job a lot more better. So I think that education and awareness around job displacements and AI enabling and coupling you for better productivity is one of those drives that we need to focus on as well.
But it's also, like, decision autonomy was a good word, because even today, no human has a decision autonomy inside a bank. Nobody can do whatever they want inside the bank.
100%.
There's all sorts of frameworks that control, even human decision. So you get a framework, you're allowed to make this credit decision within these bounds. As long as it steps out of those bounds, there's an escalation path. And AI will work exactly like that. Our organizations are effectively AIs, a bunch of minds working together to achieve a common goal, right? So the AI will have to work within that same bounds, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I love that. I mean, I just want to, just lift the human and AI collaboration point that you made, Esther, the decision autonomy point that you made, also reiterated by Dirk, but also what Yolandi said in the previous in the previous chat, where she said, despite the cool technology, people do crave human connection. So I think it all kind of like sums it up, that I think there needs to be some sort of collaboration between AI as well as humans. So coming to my fourth question, Merelda, Revon, Dirk, be ready. Esther, you can be ready as well. And this question, I'm going to have to break it up because it's a loaded question. I mean, we have spoken about some of the risks, right? But I do think let's really just highlight what are the risks and the threats that are associated with generative AI. Also touching on, the ability to implement such a complex and advanced technology in Africa, given the assumptions, that we have made about Africa in terms of infrastructural development. And maybe we could touch on, regulation, deepfakes, cybersecurity, and privacy, and how that, impacts the customer experience. So starting off, general risks associated with generative AI.
Everybody's looking to the risk person. Why? I mean, you guys know that we come to you and say, "What's your risk? Go for it. What's your risk?" So I mean, everyone spoke about these risks and a lot of them that affect generative AI, and I think one of the biggest ones for me is the whole data privacy and the impact that it has on the customer at the end of the day, and that is coupled by a lot of our social media. We have a lot of data privacy, and you can see it's all over now. Your data has been hacked here, there, everywhere. This place has a data breach, and how do we turn that risk into something that actually puts the customer at ease, so we have better customer experience and better customer enablement. I'm always one of those people that don't like to look at the risk as the bad part. Let's look at it as the opportunity. So that for me is one of those risks that I think we need to emphasize and concentrate on as an organization, or any organization, for enablement of better customer experience. Just how do we bring the customer of ease to make sure that the data is protected, we handling the data in the right manner, it's not being exploited, and also at the same time, how do we protect ourselves on that data from AI? Because, I mean, we use the AI to change the data, manipulate the data to solve for better customer experience. But there's guys out there that's waiting for us to put that AI in place so they can create a better AI to infiltrate that AI for our data. So those are the biggest, and in my opinion, that's the biggest consideration and the biggest factor or risk factor that we need to emphasize on.
Yeah, and I mean, as you're speaking about the data privacy, I was also reminded by what Brendan said 2 talks ago when he was talking about if you ask AI a stupid question and it might save it, then it will, incorporate that into kind of like its responses. And I was thinking about data integrity as well, also being a threat. So, I mean, I'm not sure if anyone has anything to say about data integrity being a threat with Gen AI.
Absolutely. I mean, the backbone, the foundation of AI is data. It's using data to be able to do what it needs to do. And, does that saying garbage in, garbage out, right? So if the data, the underlying data that's being used by those models, if they're not accurate, obviously then whatever outcome you get out of it is not going to be accurate as well. So I think there needs to be a big drive in ensuring that from a data quality perspective, it is at a level that it is usable and accurate enough. The reason I'm saying accurate enough is because I don't think there's any organization who's ever gotten data quality 100% right. If you have, please let me know how you did it. So it's about how do you get to that, what is your risk tolerance?
Yeah.
What's your risk appetite, right? And it's important if you, from an AI perspective, is to understand that if you think about what AI is, it's really trying to think like a human, and human beings innately are flawed. We are biased. So even the algorithms can have those biases embedded in them. So it's important that we understand that, and how do we mitigate for that risk, which is, we could be a lot of testing. There has to be testing involved in ensuring that the outputs that are coming out of those models are indeed correct. Secondly, I think it's also important that we keep evolving the model. I mean, if you think about it, there was a time where women were not allowed to vote. And at the time, in society, that was okay, that was allowed. And even in today's times, there are things that are okay today, but they might not be okay tomorrow, they might change. So it's important, again, that from an AI perspective, you're also evolving those models and not just leaving them to run on their own. And then, so that even from an ethical bias perspective and how it's used, it's important to look at other factors like weapons autonomy, which is kind of scary, because now there's, in the military, they're coming up with weapons that can make decisions on when they can use, the AI is making the decision when it can fire or not fire. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'd be comfortable with that. And other things
some
like
humans I don't want making that decision either.
Perhaps, yeah, some humans maybe, maybe not. But really what I'm really trying to say is with everything that we do, you have to look at the risk factors, and more than anything, what's your risk appetite and the risk tolerance, and how you're going to mitigate it.
I think
So there's external and internal risks. Obviously, the external risk is the fraudsters using this, and we can get to that. But internally, I think I agree completely. Data leakage is probably one of the quickest knee-jerk risks is like, getting these data into the model. How do you get it out? What's my right to be forgotten? All those, if the model gets it wrong, how do I correct it? All that data privacy issues. There's also the bias in even correct data that's unintentional, where we trained on a whole bunch of fraudulent documents, thousands and thousands, identity documents, and correct ones. And The model quickly figured out, because our set was all verified by SAPs, so we had all the certified stamps on it, and it quickly figured out that, oh, the stamps is unique to the fraud stamp, and there's a thumb normally in the photo of the valid ones, and it would just say the document is valid if there's a thumb. You know, those became completely overpowering, and we had to like take those out. We've had the same with credit decisioning, where when you look at the weights, a certain surname became a weight at some point. So it finally figured out that some surnames are dodgy and some aren't, right? And in our set, that was true, that was really the fact, but that you don't want that in practice. Those are risks that if you don't pay attention, you could build like basically biases into your data, into your decision engines that wasn't intended. And I, to be contrarian, I'm a little bit worried about the lack of data from Africa because we are not as connected, because not as many people have phones. These models are trained on data publicly available on the internet, and the West is putting a lot of data into the internet. So there's a lot of training data on Western culture, Western standards of morality. So I almost want to say Africa needs more internet, Africa needs more connectivity, Africa needs more so that we can have more training data. Don't know what your thoughts is on that.
I think it's almost like there's two separate AI that we're talking about, the traditional machine learning type, where a lot of these risk factors are solved by proper governance of machine learning lifecycle. And that's what we've been working on for the past 6 years of how do we identify data quality issues, how do we identify drift, how do we monitor models in production, how do we make sure that adversarial attacks are being mitigated. And that, I wouldn't say it's solved for, but it is a lot better understood compared to the generative AI realms, where the largest risk that a lot of the enterprises are facing right now with adopting generative AI is the hallucination in the content generation. And that, we always advise our customers to almost treat it as a clinical trial, where if you want to put something out in the world before that, you must do a well-sampled internal test of have you included all of these people to test your system with diverse backgrounds, ask diverse questions, with diverse accents, with diverse typing behaviors, and test all of these things internally before you push them out into production. A lot of the times they see very, very good results and little tweaks, then you can go into production. But a lot of the times that definitely does require a rethink and reapproach of how do you put this technology safely out into the wild without almost stifling too much of the innovation internally within enterprise, of putting like hundreds of pages of policy documents, but by the time you're done with the policy documents, the technology has already progressed and your policy document is outdated. So how do we balance the speed of innovation with really safeguard ourselves, of our brand reputation and our customer experience? That's quite key.
Yeah, I mean, I love that that point that you made, Merelda, that addresses Dirk's point about really just including as much diversity in the training data and ensuring that to ensure the data is representative of the area that it's representing, if that makes sense, and in this case, Africa.
The first 10% usually looks great, or the first 80%, and it's that last 20%. That's why you have to do those tests. You know, it's easy to get hyped up by the first results you see.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've got one question left, and I just wanted to give the audience a heads up that we are keen on hearing your thoughts and maybe opening it up to the floor. We might have like 5 to 10 minutes for that. So, I mean, if you could be thinking of questions so long to ask the panel, whilst I ask them the final question that we have for this panel discussion. And Merelda, I'm going to direct this one to you, and it is. What impact could generative AI have on its macro environment? You know, how will it, we've got Gen AI, how might it, you know, impact the general environment? I mean, I've got written here, you know, like how Facebook, you know, revolutionized the way that we socialized, or Tinder changed the way that we date, or e-commerce changed the way that we engage with retailers. What impact could Gen AI have on, you know, its broader kind of like macro environment?
So I love sci-fi.
You and Esther both.
and I think I'm always an optimist at heart, otherwise we wouldn't be in technology. And I think it's definitely going to reshape the society as we see it. The job market will definitely be disrupted, and I think it would all be a little bit too optimistic if we say there's going to be no impact. But a human's ingenuity. I think the previous speaker also mentioned that we will keep adapting and we will continue to become better. And one positive change that I definitely think generative AI can bring, like, would be how we interact with each other as humans. And I keep wanting to go back to the language issue because I'm an immigrant, and when I first came to South Africa, it was like tremendous challenge. There was no Google Translate, and I have to like lug around a brick of a translator and like type as I'm having like conversation with people. And over the years, the technology has improved so much, and I think there's even like these pins now that I think in the next 5 years, we would have very accurate real-time translations that we can have with people. Imagine like the universal translator in Star Trek. I think that is going to happen.
Babel fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, is there anyone who would like to add to the impact of Gen AI to broader society, Dirk?
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said, I don't think it's going to take jobs, or I would like to agree and say, look, there used to be a big industry in horse grooming, and when the car came out, that disappeared. But now there's a lot of, garages and mechanics, and, there's a new industry that pops up. So people, jobs will disappear, but people won't lose their jobs. They will have to just adapt and change to new environments and new ways of working. So that change will happen. I think there's a trust element that's going to start with deep fakes, and fake voices, fake faces. We already have some attacks that we've seen on our system with deep fake faces and definitely generated documents. So that will have an impact, I suppose, on the risk and fraud models. Mm-hmm. And I think interactions with people are already, like Facebook changed how we interacted, so maybe this will change how we start communicating with each other. If all my emails are going to go through some Gen AI, then my language will change. I'm a very abrupt emailer. Now all of a sudden it's going to have lots of flower text and big, and then somebody else is going to have an AI that just sinks that back down to one sentence, which is probably the original one I sent. So I think we're going to go through those journeys of letting it change us and then going back to what we like and what we don't like, what we keep and what we leave behind. And I think since we're just starting, we're going to go through all those growing pains still.
Yeah. Esther?
I'm excited about what it will do more than what it won't do. So there's a study that was done in the UK where they said people consume more cooking-related content than they actually cook, because we are living in a world where we are consuming so much information because there's just so much information out there. And I believe that with AI coming along, and it's meant to, what AI does really well, is it consumes large amounts of information, and then it can either summarize that or make that easier for us to consume versus us being the ones that are consuming all of that information. So I truly believe that maybe we'll get to a point where we'll stop being consumers of information and start really utilizing that time and capacity to do more innovative and creative stuff. So again, like you talked about human interactions, I'm hoping that it will get us more into being more human than it is being, always on our phones, always on our laptops, and always consuming information. And then just from an African context, I'm excited about what it can do from an education perspective. I mean, you've talked about language. Imagine the fact that we can have books and education material that is can be translated in the language that the people want to be able or can be able to read it or consume it. Healthcare, being able to access, dosage information, or if you look at instruction information in the language that they can understand, because it's a huge problem within the rest of Africa. So those kind of things for me are what is really exciting.
I think Esther took the words right out of my mouth, the excitement around the education component of it. And not just only cross-border into Africa, but I'm also thinking about those people that have imperatives to learn. I mean, Gen AI can really assist in this part. Imagine teaching you the way that you're able to learn. If you see numbers in reverse as an example, teaching you to actually correct yourself by the way you learn. So I think that's the exciting part for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think, a lot has been said. I mean, I've summarized it to one sentence, that we're solving problems, it's keeping us on our toes, and it's actually holding us accountable to evolve. So, I mean, I think to the point of solving problems, clearly there might not be a threat that AI is taking jobs from humans, because these are threats or problems that humans are not really able to solve at this point in time. And also, keeping us on our toes and holding us accountable to evolve, to start implementing content as opposed to just consuming it. Merelda, you spoke about, language translations, writing emails, education point of view, Revon. So, I mean, I think, very, very exciting, and lots of opportunities that generative AI has in Africa. So, I mean, we've gotten to that point. We've got a few minutes for any questions that the audience might have to ask our esteemed panelists. I see a hand went up that other side. Here's another hand and another small hand there. Zenzele, can we start over there, that gentleman on my far right, second row, third row? Thanks.
It's either the video week after the coffee. It's either the video week after the coffee, or we did a good job.
Cool, thanks. Just, I think 2 questions from my side. The data piece, right? I think from a data integrity, data quality perspective, I think it's important. But I think from a, so maybe introduce myself first. So I look after fraud strategy from a payments perspective. And I think one of the challenges we have is the data privacy, data governance piece in terms of sharing information between participant banks or non-banks. And we do this because I think we lack a centralized consortium, call it fraud detection tool, and just trying to get over those hurdles, because a lot of the data privacy or the papaya rules, I think, almost guards fraudsters in terms, or inadvertently guards fraudsters in terms of what we're trying to achieve. I think that's the one, and sort of just any ideas how we overcome that. I think the second one is just, I'll call it known device fraud, because a lot of the tools we have can pick up things like, if you look at behavioral biometrics, a new device coming in. But when it's actually the customer's device, it's a lot more difficult to detect. So whether it's a customer being kidnapped and performing these transactions, we try to protect the customer financially, but there's also that putting their lives in danger element. I think that's the one. And then also, customers following prompts from fraudsters, is how do we then pick up that and detect that? And a lot of the tools sort of gives an idea, but it doesn't fully solve, I think the current problem. So those 2, thanks.
Okay, so just to ensure that I understand correctly, so I mean, there's the part where you spoke about how privacy might be a guiding tool for the fraudsters. I think I got that clear. And then I just didn't get the question in your second point. I mean, I thought it was a good point. I just didn't get the question.
Just how we solve for that. So are there tools? Are there any tools out there? Any ideas on how we solve for that? Because if you think about it, we may be able to detect the fraud, sure, but not prevent it because someone's got a gun against the customer's head. Do we prevent them from doing that transfer, upsetting the fraudsters? The other one is, and maybe by definition, it's more scam than fraud, where customers are actually, following instructions from a fraudster on the phone saying transfer money from here to here. We may detect that customer responds and says, no, it's actually me doing the transaction, but actually fraudsters prompting them to do that. So that's the 2. Clear?
Anyone of the panelists, so basically, how do we navigate around the your data privacy really being a prompt for fraudsters, them innovating around the rules that actually exist? And also, how do we potentially protect our customers in like a real life fraud situation without actually putting our customers in danger, sorry.
I don't think I have a direct answer to that, but I can share an experience recently. I have like multiple iCloud accounts because I live in multiple countries and multiple credit cards. And I had to switch my iCloud account from one to another recently. And they implemented this new change because I think there was a woman in the States where she was typing in her password on her phone, and someone saw her password, they grabbed her phone and then cleared her entire life because she Apple Pays on everything. and because like two-factor authentication, they have her phone. So I think as a consequence of that, Apple implemented this thing of you can still change your iCloud account, but then you have to wait for an hour before you can like log out of Find My and a lot of these things. It was super frustrating for me when I was trying to do it, but I understand, like, I would rather them have that than not have it and my phone gets stolen and, like, you know, I lose my entire life savings. So I think it's always like a balance of, there's a lot of stringent controls that you can put in that might impact the customer's experience, but for the better, in a very like short span of that. And also there's quite a lot of voice recognition software that not only detects if this is your real voice, but if you have like nervousness and things of your voice. And on top of that, the adversarial attack of, is this voice synthesized or generated by like an AI? So there are technologies that are out there, but I don't actually know how widely implemented they are in terms of fraud.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, fraud data is not protected by POPIA. So banks are allowed to share fraud data with each other. They just don't. But when you speak to most banks that are willing to, nobody's just not doing it. I agree that in facial recognition, emotion can be detected. The question isn't whether we can detect it, is what to do then. You know, what is morally the right thing? Do you rather transfer the funds and not aggravate the criminal? I don't really know how the AI angle is in that scenario, but from a deep fake point of view, faking a customer's face, you know, using a model of their face to then fake their face and then create a deep fake, that could be detected. But an actual hostage situation, I think that's more again, a human question. What should we do? Should we protect the money or the life? Probably the life, right? And deal with the rest. And does protecting, you know, is it the future further fraud that you prevent that's better, or the current one? I mean, that's a big moral question, which is for humans, not for AI.
Thanks. Thanks, Dirk. Ursula, we've got 1 minute. Do I have time for one question, or should I just wrap it up now? One question.
No, she changed her mind. She said, right.
There was a question here, yes.
I have a question, so I'll try and be really, really quick. So it kind of feels, I may be wrong, so it's kind of a sanity check. It kind of feels like we are in the early genesis of the maturity of AI. Yes, fraud is really, really super important, but what are you seeing like in the future? And if you just let your minds roam, what are you seeing in the future, particularly for our continent, in terms of advancing? I like the way that you're talking, Dirk, about our data. We're just not producing enough African data that is accurate for us. And then secondly, Brendan, the previous speaker, 2 speakers back, talked about people. And I'm just wondering, what are we doing about maybe the development of people in terms of their depth and breadth, who are developing these models, so that there's kind of openness about how these models are being developed, right? It's not only about bias, it's about the environment, it's about wellness, it's about, you know, contributing to the economy at a macro and micro level. What's happening in terms of developing the thinking of people who are developing the models?
Thanks. So I mean, just to summarize, what does the future of AI look like? And secondly, how are we developing the people that are actually in charge of the development of this very influential technology? Any takers?
I'll have a go. I think the future is in prediction. So if we're all financial services, FinTech, so I think anticipating transactions before they happen, anticipating needs before they happen, looking at someone's life and saying, oh, I see something's happened, you might need funds, we've pre-approved a loan, here's something, you know. So that's where I see the future going. And it's largely driven what we've seen in other industries. So Amazon has the Amazon Fresh store in Seattle. It's just a concept they did for themselves. where you can walk in, take an object, and walk out. There's no till, there's no self-checkout. The AI sees what you're doing, you can pick up an object, you can put it back, and you can pick up another, and it's just full convenience. And humans want convenience, so whatever will give us convenience is that will trump. So AI will be making our lives more convenient, and it will make our financial lives hopefully more convenient too. It'll tell me you're not saving enough for you know, I know you want your kids to go to university, you're not saving enough, you need to buy a product like this, this or this. You know, that prediction and convenience, and just say yes, go and deduct it every month.
Thank you.
I can add to about the education of the people who are developing the models. In most of the institutions, there are ethics or business type of subjects that you have to pass as an engineer or computer scientist. And at least from my experience, most of these research groups are the ones who are most advocate and are thinking about the inclusivity and diversity of these when developing these models. It is actually when they're putting into production in the industry where the business leaders are less educated about the threats and the warnings, and that's when they can stifle, push something out to production a lot earlier than they are ready, or saying, oh, we don't have to have an inclusive and diverse testing data set because it takes a very long time to collect these data sets. So I think in addition to developing the people who are building these models, we must develop almost everyone, the leaders, especially when they are making these calls of how do we balance budget and all of the other good things that the technology needs.
Thank you so much, Merelda. So if we can just wrap it up there. There's so many insights. I've got 3 pages of insights, I can't summarize that. But I really would just like to thank our panelists for this really, really informative, insightful conversation. Thank you to the FinTech Summit, and hope you enjoy the rest of the 2-day conference that we have. Thank you. And thank you all for participating.